On this week's Waste of the Week, the Department of Defense had more than $292 million in costs that were questioned. And thanks to the $1.7 trillion spending bill passed last month, the Transportation Security Administration will receive $400 million in pay raises. Joining us this morning with the details, founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. Good morning to you, Adam. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jan.
Let's start with the Department of Defense. A 2022 audit of the DoD found hundreds of millions of dollars in costs that are in violation of funding regulations, may not have adequate documentation, or appear unreasonable. This is according to them. Can you give us some details about where the spending may have gone?
Yeah, this is on procurement. So when the Pentagon buys things, and look, it's a target-rich environment over at the Pentagon for waste, fraud, and taxpayer abuse. Our organization, Jan, has found in the past that the Pentagon spent on expensive coffee cups, for example, for their fighter pilots. Each coffee cup cost $1,200 a piece. They spent $300,000 before we got that program shut down. So look, I'd feel a lot better about identifying about $300 million worth of questionable costs if the Pentagon could simply pass their large audit. Look, the Inspector General who issued this audit on the $300 million, they're supposed to be the watchdog of the Pentagon, but you know, the number is so small. The Pentagon's going to spend about $1 trillion this year. They've got $7 trillion worth of assets, Jan. So what's $300 million worth of question costs? They got to stop being the lapdog and start being the watchdog of the Pentagon.
And Adam, we're talking about basic accounting controls for one of the largest federal agencies. So what controls exist right now in the DoD, and what needs to be implemented to try and prevent $1,000, whatever you said, coffee cups? What can be done to prevent this amount of questionable funding in the future?
So here's the problem. The generals don't care about the accounting because the generals say they're out there to defend the national security and to win wars, and they can't be troubled with accounting measures. The financial systems are very poor, and there's no after-action reporting or review of expenses. So the system's poor. So there's two reforms. Number one, we need to stop the $100 billion year-end spending spree, this use it or lose it year-end spending spree over at the Pentagon, when 1 out of every 5 contract dollars is blown out the door in the final 30 days of the fiscal year, so the Pentagon can get the same budget or more from Congress next year. That's number one. Number two is, since the generals don't care, there are 50 members of Congress that have signed on to an audit the Pentagon bill, that if you're an entity of the Department of Defense, and if you flunk your audit, your budget gets cut by 1%. And Jan, we could cut 10% off our Department of Defense budget. It's the largest federal agency, and still our military spending would exceed the next 10 countries that spend the most on their military, and 5 of those are our allies.
Wow. That's incredible there. All right, TSA receiving $400 million in pay raises thanks to the Fed's new spending bill. The initial proposal was $1.6 billion. That would have increased salaries across the board by almost 30%. What did you make of these pay raises, Adam? Did they also get more money to hire more people?
Well, they did. They got about $62 million to hire more people and increase the headcounts over at the TSA. Jan, here's what the critics say about the TSA. They've never stopped a terrorist attack. 70 to 90% of the time, when the testers come through the checkpoint, they can get a knife or a gun or a fake bomb through. The critics say that this agency that never existed before 2001 should either be privatized or abolished because of its poor track record. What this omnibus spending bill did is give the TSA billions of dollars more to become more permanent, to be cemented into the federal bureaucracy. One example of that is this bill also gave the TSA employees collective bargaining rights, union rights. Again, another step forward to permanent cementation in the federal bureaucracy.
Yeah, $10.2 billion for the TSA in 2023. That's a lot. All right, Adam Andrzejewski, great to see you on this Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jan.